Hi, friends. Raise your hand if you like big mechs, big old guns, and great houses that utilize said giant mechs and big old guns. Well, if you do, go play Battletech. But if you like all those awesome things and want a more on the nose night theme set in the 40k universe, then this video is for you. That's right, today we're talking about the Imperial Knights. This faction is super awesome and one of the most, if not the most, unique armies on the tabletop. The faction is predominantly made up of humongo knightly mecha suits who literally and figuratively stomp their foes with overwhelming firepower and sheer force. So you can finally enjoy mecha without fear of being called a weeb. Plus, these aren't just your regular run-of-the-mill mecha suits. Them being called the Imperial Knights is a subtle reference to their medieval knight-inspired theming and culture, which is one of the most interesting things about the faction. Which is saying a lot for a faction with giant robot suits. But before we get knights into it, let me tell you about a deal just as humongo as the knights. That's right, Tabletop Stronghold is back to sponsor another video. In case you haven't heard of them before, Tabletop Stronghold makes some awesome miniature cases in MDF terrain. The Mag Case 2.0 is their flagship product and is super tough, spacious, has convenient removable steel trays, and comes in a variety of sizes. Whether you need a mini for your kill teams or combat patrols, or the humongo Mag Case 2.0 Mega, which can fit a whole knight army just like your very own dropkeep, Tabletop Stronghold has got you covered. And although the cases are the main event, Tabletop Stronghold's terrain offerings are no slouch either. The MDF terrain set is perfect for competitive and casual play as it was designed to be configured into all the current GW competitive layouts and is nicely detailed to add fluff and scenery to your games. Best of all, there's an excellent mag case and terrain bundle, which is the best way to go if you want both the case and terrain. And to make matters even better, there's currently a spring sale with up to 30% off on the cases and terrain. And to make better matters even better, there's free shipping to the US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. So be sure to check out Tabletop Stronghold for some awesome mini cases and MDF terrain. A night-sized thanks to Tabletop Stronghold for supporting the channel. And now we can get right into it. The Imperial Knights originated in the beginnings of the Dark Age of technology when humanity first began to colonize the galaxy. This initial colonization was treacherous as the colonists landed on deadly planets, encountered deadly flora and fauna, and weathered deadly environmental factors such as extreme radiation, alien disease, and, weather. In addition, the colonists had to cannibalize their own ships to begin their colonies, so there was no escapes from the horrors in space. Well, technically horrors on planet, but those planets are in space. Much like all planets are, but horrors in space is more exciting. But alas, in the treacherous grasp of the final frontier, the only thing that stood between the colonists and certain doom was the indomitable human spirit. And there are STC machines which use the power of technology and science fiction to magically fabricate basically anything the colonists needed. This includes, but is not limited to, tools, weapons, buildings, generators, and of course, giant mecha suits. Woo! These giant mecha suits were the Knights, and they proved invaluable to the colonists. These gargantuan mechs were used for construction, resource gathering, and most awesomely, they could be fitted with a ton of guns and swords to go fight aliens. Woo! In order to pilot the Knights, one must be extremely skilled, brave, and charismatic to even get the opportunity to become a pilot. On the most hostile of worlds, the Knight pilots were stalwart protectors, loved by the people, and were even treated as celebrities in some cases. Eek! Oh my technology, is that a Knight? I think it is, man. Holy science! You gotta say hi. Oh man, I can't. He's such a big celebrity, and I'm far too shy. Pfft, you're such a big pussy, dude. However, as time went on, a little quirk with the Knight suits became apparent. So, to pilot a Knight, a pilot has to interface with something called a throne mechanicum. The throne essentially bonds the pilot with his or her Knight to where the pilot is basically the brain and the Knight is the body. This connection is so strong that the knight's mind would become imprinted into the suit, and piloting the knight would be just like moving yourself. It also meant that the pilot felt any damage that the knight sustained even if they weren't actually harmed. This also had the side effect of the knight suit slowly altering the minds of the pilot. This mind altering made the knights act more like actual knights of old, and also made them become more authoritarian over their colonies. What actually causes mind change is debated among Imperial scholars, but leading theories are either IT troubles or ghosts, so yeah, we'll keep the Imperials best and brightest on the case. Personally, I think that'd be cool and makes sense if it was a mix of both. It makes sense to me that the Knights STCs were designed to have some sort of mind-altering feature to ensure the pilots protected the people at all costs while also not letting the power corrupt them to turn on their fellow colonists, hence the super loyal noble protector thing. But in practice, the mind-altering maybe kinda went overboard and made the pilots take over society. Then, for the ghosts, since knights need a bond with their suit and imprint their personality into it, the personality got integrated into the knight's inherent noble mind change thingamabob and influenced new knights along with the throne mechanicum. But that's just what I think. I don't think it's actual canon, so feel free to comment your thoughts on it. Anyways, though, this mind change is what transformed the early colonies into the feudal societies famous for the space robot knights that we know and paint today. The knight pilots became the ruling nobles of their worlds, and the other colonists essentially became their subjects. However, this wasn't strictly bad for the non-knight pilot colonists, as the knights were their valiant protectors, and the mind-altering only made their protective nature even more fervent. The knights became even more loyal to their subjects, adopted codes of honor, and became ultra-chivalrous. And they say chivalry is dead. Wow. In addition to the Knights pilots taking over and reshaping their societies, these colonies became very insular and resistant to technological advancement. Yeah, the societies whose defining trait was their giant mecha suits with sun lasers were the anti-technology boomers of the dark age of technology. Food for thought. Due to this, the night worlds became a super space version of those medieval times shows and dinners. But the cringe low IQ antics that the other Dark Agers sneered at the Night Worlds for was what would have saved them in the Age of Strife. During the Man of Iron Uprising and Psychic Awakening, most of humanity fell and reverted to a barbaric state. A techno-barbaric state, that is. However, the Night World's boomerisms mostly saved them from this fate as they rejected the use of the Men of Iron, were intolerant to psychers, and disliked other tech that would end up ravaging the Milky Way galaxy. So, during the Age of Strife, the Night World just amped up their usual ways to 40,000 and honed in their skills even further to defend against the awakened horrors of the galaxy. And thanks to the might of the Knights, very few Night Worlds fell during this turbulent time. Then, once the Imperium of Man was established, a rogue trader named Jeffers was the first to rediscover the ancient Night Worlds. The Night World's extremely intolerant and backwards ways was matched by the Imperials, and they gelled well together. Jeffers returned and he told the greater Imperium of the Knight's survival, and the Imperium of Mechanicus made a mad dash to reclaim the Night Worlds. Even though the Imperium and Mechanicus are technically the same entity, they do tend to do their own thing and clash from time to time. The Mechanicus tech priests were hailed as prophetic saviors meant to reinvigorate the decaying tech of the Night Worlds, and Imperial Crusaders taught the Knights of the Holy Emperor. Knights loyal to the Imperium first and foremost would become the sub-faction known as the Questor Imperialis, and those loyal to the Mechanicus would be Questor Mechanicus. There's also a third major sub-faction known as the Freeblades. These knights left their houses and traveled the galaxy fighting and stuff. And of course, just like basically every other Imperial faction, the Night Houses became split in the Horus Heresy when some Night Houses defected to fight alongside Horus and others stayed loyal to the Imperium. In the current setting, Knights remain a powerful asset for the Imperium and Chaos alike, and their sheer presence on the battlefield is only eclipsed by Titans. Which, speaking of battlefields, let's talk about the knight suits themselves. There are many patterns of knights and even more sub-patterns based on armaments, but today we'll cover the most common major patterns. First off, the smallest and cutest knights, the Arminger pattern knights. These funky little guys are piloted by lower class pilots and act as support pieces for the bigger knights. They are fast and often equipped to deal with smaller threats not worthy of unleashing the power of God on. Next, the most common pattern is the Questoris pattern knight. This is a relatively old platform, but it's one of the most modular, allowing it to fit a variety of roles, and it's kind of a jack of all trades knight. Next, we got the Humongo Dominus pattern. This is a knight that pops in my head when I think of Imperial Knights. Its silhouette is just so striking and it looks so cool with all its giant guns and weapons. These knights are often fitted with many weapons and crush their opposition with overwhelming firepower. Then, getting even more humongo, we got the Acastus pattern knight. These are the biggest Imperial Knights, and they're almost as big as the smallest Imperial Titans. Only the most powerful and fortunate knight houses have access to these knights, and it's often seen as an avatar of the Omnissiah's divine might. They have the most firepower of all the knights and are able to blast nearly anything into oblivion. Then, breaking our trend of getting bigger, we go a bit smaller than the gargantuan Acastus with the Cerastus pattern. The Cerastus pattern is this weird lanky thing, and it's one of the oldest patterns in knights. As such, it's faster and more resilient than other knights in its size class. And it's also probably my least favorite knight. I know a lot of people like this, but it looks really dumb to me with its ostrich legs and more human proportions. I really like the knight's very distinct and iconic proportions with their massive upper section and stocky legs, but yeah, it wouldn't be a Crackduck video if I didn't somehow talk about how much I like stupid proportions. But anyways, let's talk about the armaments and armor of the knights. While there are many types of knights, most of them are standard equipped with near impervious adamantium armor, ion shields, which are force fields much like void shields, but instead of absorbing enemy firepower like a void shield, ion shields slow and deflect projectiles and are generally less protective. However, something less protective than a Titan shield is still pretty damn protective, and they can withstand heavy hitters like Tau railgun strikes, Necron death rays, enemy knight weapons, and other stuff. The ion shields can be even more effective when used by skilled knight pilots who know how to leverage the shield's angles to better deflect enemy firepower. And this is a cool thing that ties back to the knight's knight theme. But finally, let's touch on some of their knightly weapons. They have a lot of sci-fi upscaled versions of classic knight weapons like lances, gauntlets, and swords. Ginormous badass swords, that is. Look at that chain sword. Coolest shit ever. In addition to this, they've also got some things named like classic knight weapons, but are in actuality giant space guns. They've got the Volcano Lance, which is a humongous las cannon able to fell nearly any foe, or perhaps a Thermal Spear, which is basically just a giant melted cannon, also able to fell nearly any foe. Another iconic weapon of the Knights is the Avenging Gatling Cannon, which is a giant Gatling gun that lays down an apocalyptic amount of shells on their enemies and is able to make Disney billions of dollars. Or, another iconic weapon is the simple, humble Battle Cannon. Just because it's a simple weapon doesn't mean it can't absolutely fell nearly any foe. They can also, of course, be fitted with basically any of the normal Imperial weapons. Commonly, they'll have some autocannons, bolters of some sort, missile launchers, and many other things strapped to their backs, shoulders, and also their chests. Titty guns are back! Woo! And they've also got like a million other guns, but I'll have to talk about those a different day. I'll also talk about the various knight houses and free blades in another video. But before going into closing thoughts, I just want to mention one of the coolest, if not the coolest things, and one of the coolest, if not the coolest factions. The Knights are a powerful force on the battlefield, but just how do they get onto said battlefield? Well, giant buses would just be silly, so the Knights often get shot from orbit onto the battlefield in ginormous drop keeps. That's right, the Knights get shot from space in drop castles. Coolest shit ever! These drop keeps deploy the Knights and serve as temporary fortresses. In addition, they're of course decked out with the Knight House's heraldry and play music for proper theming. These drop keeps can house multiple Knights, come crashing to the surface, open their drawbridges to unleash the Knights on whatever poor idiot decided to worship chaos and / or be a Xeno. But on that awesome note, that's the Imperial Knights. These fellas are some of the coolest things in 40k, and to me, represent one of the coolest parts of the setting as a whole. On the surface, you see the knights and you just think, oh yeah, big Evangelion-ass mech suits, I get it. But once you read more about them, there's just so much more interesting stuff, just like most things in 40k. Like, the knight thing isn't just a name and aesthetic, these dudes are essentially what we imagined knights of old to be, except their suits of armor are now giant robot suits with plasma guns and chain swords. And I'm no knight history expert, but nobles in advanced near impervious armor who are the big boy cavalry threats on the battlefield sound similar enough to me. And also, again, big guns on even bigger robot is just freaking cool. So, let me know what you think of the knights. What's your favorite pattern and do you like the Cerastus or not? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. And big thanks to Tabletop Stronghold for sponsoring this video. Be sure to check out the Mad Case Terrain Bundle. I also heard he's a huge Imperial Knight fan, so hopefully this video was satisfactory.
And I'm at Adepticon, but I forgot to thank my lovely patrons, and I couldn't leave you guys out, so thanks a ton for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it.
And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your humongo non-anime mecha suits. Thanks.